planted from seed. It's okay, kitty. Hi, welcome back to Sage and Stone Homestead. My name is Heather. This is Monty, and today is the 15th, I believe, of October. And so our first frost is coming just a titch early, but you know, it happens. That's why it's an estimated first frost. It's a lot like a due date. It's not an exact thing. Oh, he wants to get down. You want to get down? So we're only about a couple hours before sunset, and I've been doing a tiny bit of work today, not a lot, but I do want to get a few things out of the garden that are going to get damaged. So we're frosting tonight, and then tomorrow night the frost is a little bit worse. Now we're not getting down to freezing. I think the lowest is 34 for the area, but we are a low spot in the surrounding area. We have the lower property and cool air pools, hot air rises, and so a lot of times we will frost before anyone else. So we have a frost advisory for the area. It's going to get colder here for sure. We've got a lot of green loofah that I'm going to cut off of the plant. I have left green, like pretty tough loofah out in a frost before, and where the leaves will die back and get damaged, a lot of times the fruit is fine, but I'm going to grab these off anyway. I have these brown ones up here that I may just decide to leave because like the frost isn't going to hurt those. And then there's not a whole ton going on in here that really needs my attention. This is unusual for me. Usually I'm scrambling like crazy trying to get stuff out and get stuff preserved at the end of the season, but we put our fall and winter garden in about a month early, so I already have done all this clean out. So it's just a really chill first frost day, and I kind of love it. So we're gonna do a little bit of like a combo video today, a little bit of frost prep, and then a frost garden tour after the frost hits tomorrow morning. Loofah that I'm picking is coming off of only 2 plants, and I grew 2 plants because I was nervous, like what if one plant doesn't make it, then I don't get any loofah. But this is going to be way more loofah than we're going to need, and last year I grew loofah and we still haven't gone through all of that loofah, so I really need to look at this and assess what I really want to do here. How much do I really want to harvest from here, and how much do I just want to put back into the garden by way of compost. So at this point I have 2 milk crates of green ones, and I did decide to go ahead and pick the brown ones, and I have this many brown ones. So I just have to assess how much that I really want to deal with. I have been trying to impress upon you guys this whole last season about how it is okay if your garden or your homestead really outperforms your expectations and you don't have the capacity to deal with it all. But what is super awesome is that that abundance can go just right back into the homestead, and in this case right back into the garden. I think it was one of the members that brought it to my attention that you can actually mince up loofah and use it as like kind of like a peat moss or like a cocoa core in your garden to help retain moisture. And I absolutely believe that to be true. I mean, people use these as sponges. That's what we use them for. And I've obviously picked way more than we're going to be able to need in that capacity, and I have the ability to grow more next year. So the ones that are left down there, I'm really not going to sweat it. We'll put it right back into the garden, and we'll have to buy less amendments. Oh my goodness. That's amazing.
That's a
My shed that we were just in got really out of hand with my messiness throughout the year. I had just been hoarding tons of boxes. I know it's probably sacrilegious to be burning canning boxes. I thought I'd use them and I haven't, so it's time for them to go. Here's the kids' garden. They have a lot of frost tender things out here. I let them know that they could pick whatever they wanted and they needed to do so today, or else it was going to be all bad by tomorrow. I think one of them came out here for like 5 minutes and then he decided he was over it. I think they have the same kind of sentiment as Mama. Just a little bit overwhelmed, a little bit tired, and it's okay. We'll go right back into the garden. They mostly only have tomatoes left. This Berry's Crazy Cherry was the best performing cherry tomato on the whole homestead. Still has a whole bunch of them. I did pull out a little glass jar to maybe collect some tomatoes in, but I definitely am not going to be picking all of them. Here's our beautiful cherry tomato sampler. I think tomorrow we'll be glad that I did this. It's magnetic.
I didn't realize that.
These are the key lime bush trees. I think they're still the same thing as like a standard key lime tree. They've just been trimmed to have like a bush habit. I've already gotten quite a few off of here, and these guys are definitely getting ready. You can see them starting to turn a little bit yellow. But key lime is definitely one of those things that cannot be out in the frost. From what I've heard, as far as citrus goes, key lime is definitely the most sensitive. So we've got a spot in the shed that we're gonna put it, if it'll fit. There it goes. We'll lock the wheels. This garden didn't frost. Good morning. The sun has not come up over the horizon just yet. I wanted to try to catch some images of the frost before the sun hit the leaves and melted it off, but it didn't hit over here. This is the loofah, and there's a lot of tomato over here, and it doesn't appear that there's frost that's settled on the leaves here, but they're higher. I mean, these leaves look a little bit wet, but they don't look frosty. They look dewy. And here's the okra. Same thing, it looks dewy and not frosty. And then when we pan to this leaf on the ground, down here, this is frost. Way down low. There's some frost on the grass down here. There we go. That tomato is frosted. Can you see the difference? It's kind of crazy. There's not much frost here in the kids' garden either. I guess they get an extra day to pick tomatoes if they want. We have this volunteer squash over by the chicken run, and I forgot to come over here and look at this yesterday, and I was kind of sad, but it looks like this doesn't have obvious signs of frost in it. It does have a little bit of powdery mildew. That's what these white spots are, but that's the squash that we have. Looks like a pumpkin crossed with something. Now, I had talked about how we had in our pumpkin patch, which we'll go over there when the sun comes up, but I had a white zucchini in with my Dutch fork pie pumpkin. And I talked about how I thought that there was a pretty high likelihood of cross-pollination, at least with that squash with some pumpkins. There's only one squash plant, but there were several Dutch fork pie pumpkins, and so there's a good chance that that squash plant had a lot of pumpkin pollen put into the bloom. So this may have come from one of those white zucchinis crossed with a pumpkin. I don't know, because this genuinely doesn't look like anything I've grown before. That is so funny looking. Alrighty, so it's later in the day, and that frost was probably the lightest frost I feel like we've ever experienced. Now tonight, instead of a frost advisory, they have given us a freeze warning. So rest assured, tomorrow morning we will get what we've got coming to us. Most of the fall and winter garden is taking place in this high tunnel here. I do have a couple other growing spaces that we had been growing in over summer, and I just wanted to update you on those. This here is our 100-foot lane, where last year we grew quite a few vining things, and this year I only used maybe a third of it. I had some chicken and dumplings cowpeas here, and I had some melons down way on the end, and the goats have basically cleared off all evidence of such things, because I've got a few boy goats out here. They're doing a real good job doing what they do, eating grass, being happy. This high tunnel I purchased from Grower Solution. It's 25 feet wide and 40 feet long, and we put this in 2021, I believe. It's first year. It had some pigs in it, and I did plant in ground that fall, and we had a pretty good fall and winter garden that year, but ever since it's been pretty rough. We've had a real hard time planting in the ground in the fall and winter, just because our ground, it's straight up clay and it gets very, very muddy in the fall and winter. But we have upgraded the greenhouse this year, and I am so happy to announce that all of the beds are in, all of the beds are filled, and all of the beds are planted. And that is so crazy cool. I had come in here and opened up these end wall doors here and turned on the fans because it was getting kind of hot in here. So I think we'll turn those off so you can hear me a little better. And there we are, much better. So inside here, I do still have a few things growing that are frost tender. This here is Malabar spinach. I have essentially stopped harvesting from this. This was such a beautiful focal point to the garden. Basically all summer long, it didn't take very long to really take off and put on these like little pink flowers, and then subsequently these little purpley berries. Now the entire plant is kind of underwhelming in flavor, but I really, really appreciated having a heat tolerant green that I could chop up and add to dishes, add to my, Homestead conglomerate meals that I sometimes make, especially in the summertime when things are busy and I just want to kind of throw something together. This provided a lot of that leafy green nutrition that can be kind of lacking for us in our area, because a lot of leafy green things just don't grow well when it's super hot out. I have been told that we should expect many volunteers from this Malabar spinach. Inside each little berry are a couple seeds, and there's a bunch of little berries. I love me a good volunteer, so I'm fine with that. I will say that this plant is very good at grabbing your hair and not letting go. That's the only complaint that I have. So where to start? I guess we'll start right here next to the Malabar spinach. I have a few different starts of a romaine lettuce. I had transplanted these in this spot right before the last garden tour, and a lot of times when plants are transplanted, they go through what's called transplant shock. Sometimes they'll wilt, but not always. Sometimes it just seems like they're doing a whole lot of nothing. It's like they're not growing at all. But what they're doing is actually reestablishing the roots. They're doing a lot of downward growing, and once you start to see upward growth again, that's how you know they're well established. So I am starting to see some upward growth on these transplants, and that is a good sign. Behind them I have some random brassicas. I have mentioned it before that I didn't do a great job keeping track of the starts that I started. This whole greenhouse was started from seed, I will say that. But as things are getting a little bit bigger, I think I'm kind of decoding what I've got. I believe that this is a Brussels sprout. This here looks like a cabbage. It feels like a cabbage too. This looks like a cauliflower to me, as do those. Over here in this bed, I have some starts that I started at the same time as some of these real big ones, but they spent a lot of time in the seedling trays, not really allowed to stretch out their roots, and you can really see the difference in how much smaller they are. Now, this variety here is the golden cross cabbage. These are miniature cabbages. The heads get to be about, you know, softball size. So these are smaller too because I also started them later. Hopefully these bigger starts back here of these larger plants, hopefully they catch up and do well and aren't stunted, you know, forever. But it will be kind of nice that they're a little bit further behind some of the other brassicas, because it's gonna kind of allow us to have like a succession harvest. So I don't have all kinds of broccoli or all kinds of Brussels sprouts coming in all at once. We'll have harvest kind of trickling in for hopefully a few weeks. Down here, this is where we get into some of the bigger plants. This is broccoli right here. This is a hybrid variety of broccoli. At least this is. This kind of looks cauliflower-ish. That one may too. This is broccoli though. That's for sure. Look at how big this is. They have really established well and taken off. This entire bed here is broccoli, as is this bed. And these are some cabbages that have started to head up already. If I look in here and I kind of pinch, I can feel that we're starting to get a little bit of a dense head in there, and that is so exciting. Next to the broccoli on this side, I have a King Tut purple hull pea. These are English shelling peas, so it's those green peas like you would get at the freezer section in the store, like with peas and carrots, that kind of a pea. And they're getting to the size, they're over a foot high at this point. They're getting to the size where I feel like we should be seeing our first blossoms soon, and I haven't seen it yet, but by next garden tour we should see them. Over here on this side where our cabbages are, I sprinkle sowed some lettuce seed here, and it's funny, it looks like really only one variety took off. I do believe that the seed packet that I used to sow in here was like a Rocky Top lettuce mix. I believe it had, you know, 5 or 6 different colored varieties, but it looks like I only had one variety really take off, which is kind of funny. I am just gonna leave these sewed closely together. I plan to come through here and pick them like baby greens. There's a couple different colors. So we did get a couple little seedlings in here of different varieties, but it's mostly, you know, whatever that is. I do have a couple green stalks in my greenhouse. The one on the end when you walk in the door, that one is strawberries. Those are ever-bearing strawberries, and that's going to stay a strawberry green stalk. This one I'd really like to switch out and do something else with. I do have some frost-tolerant plants in here, like chard, but there's a lot of other things in here that really have seen better days and have gone by the wayside. This here is a tomato. These tomatoes have been in here a really long time and they're still producing. This is the orange hat tomato. I can't say that I'd really recommend that tomato. It's not that great a flavor. The skin is really, really thick. If you want a small tomato variety for a green stalk, I really liked a variety that I grew in my perennial garden this year called Tiny Tim? Tommy Toe? Whatever it is, I'll put it in the words. And that was a really, really delicious tomato that grew really well in a situation like the green stalk. So one of the reasons that I have not dealt with this yet is I have noticed that we do have kind of a nasty wasp situation, and I have seen some wasps kind of flying in here like they've built nests inside the tiers. So I'm gonna wait a bit to do anything with these. Really, the wasps should be kind of abandoning their nests at this time of year and starting to hibernate. I'm just gonna wait until I know that they should be moved on before I have my husband come in here and help me dismantle these and amend them and plant something else. Likely some kind of frost tolerant green is gonna go in here. I thought about starting some celery, but I think that the celery is gonna need some more space. I do have a little bit of celery growing in here, and we could use this. I mean, I could pull from it and chop it up and put it in a soup, and I will do that with these, but I'm kind of wanting some big stalks of celery. I've not had success growing celery yet, and that's something that I think I'm a little bit late to start it on for like the fall and winter, but it's something that I'm thinking about starting in the late winter, growing into the spring. So if you have experience with celery and you have any tips, I would love to hear them. Over here we have a volunteer birdhouse gourd. I think the plant starts somewhere down here, and it grew up onto my workbench here, and I've just let it live here. And this is not frost tolerant, this is frost tender. Being in the greenhouse, it's going to take it a while probably to succumb. I don't think it's really putting on any more fruits. I think it's just sort of is what it is at this point, and the fruit that it has on it is what's going to be. So maybe sometime soon I will claim my workbench back, but I haven't really needed it for anything, so I've just been leaving it. Over on this side of the greenhouse, I have amended and planted the beds that were not amended and planted the last time we were in here, and I do have some small seedlings coming up. These are the green arrow shelling peas, and then behind those I have some small kale. This is the red Russian kale. The red Russian kale has been the most frost tolerant in my experience, and so we're excited to grow this. I want to see how long we can take it into the springtime. Now, our greenhouse does pretty well against frosts and freezes to a point, but we can get super low. The greenhouse is not heated. It does have some tears in the plastic that I need to fix. It is kind of a little bit drafty, so we don't hope to get anything like frost tender very far into winter, but the frost tolerant things, we hope that we can have the winter be a little bit less impactful on them, be a little bit less harsh, and see how far we can get stuff like this going. I do have this row of peppers that I've talked about for a little while and really haven't done much with. The peppers are still on here. Some of them are sunburned. A lot of the jalapenos that I have here are turning red as they do. This is kind of an experiment. I'd like to see how long we can get these guys into winter. So far, so good. I had called this particular pepper the Sugar Rush Peach in my last garden tour, and I misspoke. I know that this is not Sugar Rush Peach. This here is the Pippin's Golden Honey sweet pepper, and it's good. The flavor of the peppers on this plant is genuinely getting more sweet and more developed with time. Like I said, I've kind of ignored this pepper row for a while, and these peppers have been on the plant for a little while. Admittedly, I have not watered in here since Hurricane Helene came and kind of drenched the inside of my greenhouse, and so maybe they're a little bit more concentrated in flavor because they haven't been watered. Not sure, but they're very good. Back behind the peppers, this is actually the last bed that we amended and filled, and I did plant some pak choi and some yod pha broccoli. I direct seeded those only a couple days ago, and we don't have anything coming up yet. Being that we are seeing some pretty cold nights, it might be a while for these to germinate, but it also might not be too long. I expect to see seedlings within a week of sowing them at this time of year, especially from seeds that are used to growing or prefer growing in cool weather. So nothing really to see in here yet, but I do have it planted. Guess we can go this way. These are just more random brassicas. They are a little bit smaller than what we have growing over there. When it came to amending and putting the plants in, I was definitely faster putting in that side than this side. But again, it should not be a problem because we'll just be able to harvest with succession. You can see I have a bunch of tomatoes kind of pocked throughout the mulch here. Quite a few of these beds I was able to grow in over the summer, and when I amended them, I needed to remove the mulch to get down to the soil that was underneath. A lot of the soil was acting pretty hydrophobic. It's like it repelled moisture, which is not good. So I spent a lot of time rehydrating that soil by hand, just kind of stirring it up and making sure I doused it real well. And when I took the mulch off, all I did was just put the mulch on a different bed that was already set and ready to go. And so some of the tomatoes that grew over here and just fell down into the mulch, they made their way over to these beds. So that's what that is. I'm just gonna leave them. They'll nourish the bed. Down here, we have a bed of kohlrabi. I have one of my viewers, one of you guys had told me that you planted kohlrabi close together. I have some kohlrabi planted over here. These are about a foot apart, but someone said they planted them, I think 6 to 8 inches apart. So I planted these closer. These here are little baby chard seedlings, and I did put in, I think it was 6 rows of radishes over here. 6 or 8, I think it was 4 different types, 2 rows, so 8 rows of radishes. Again, just sowed a few days ago, and so they haven't germinated yet. Down here I have some more lettuce seedlings that I don't really have a spot to pop them in yet. Maybe they'll last long enough to be able to put in that green stalk down there when I get to amending it. We've got these carrots. This is the first round of carrots that I sowed, and they're doing well, nice and lush. And then I put in just about a week-ish ago, maybe it was 2 weeks ago, I sowed this carrot bag, and that is also doing well. We've got some true leaves coming up here. And the hope, I haven't done it yet, but the hope is to succession plant again this bag with more carrot seeds so that we can just harvest carrots for a few weeks straight. This tall bed is a nice one. I believe this is a cabbage. This kind of also looks like a cabbage, but wouldn't surprise me if that's a Brussels sprout. And I don't really know what I'm looking at here, but random brassicas doing really well, getting big, and the alyssum that I planted as a ground cover next to them has really taken off, especially in this corner here. This ground cover is frost tolerant, and it will have like little purple and yellow flowers. I'm excited to see that pop of color, because when things finally die out here, when we get a real freeze and winter really sets in, that'll be a really nice little pop of color in here. I don't know how frost tolerant alyssum is, but I think it's decently frost tolerant. I did talk about the kohlrabi that we have in this row. This was all transplanted, and it did take a couple weeks to really start to show some upward growth, but we've got some new leaves and they're starting to fill out, which is really nice to see. And on this side of the trellis, I have some more peas. These are the green arrow shelling pea. This is the perfect bird eating size, and I'm happy to announce that our little rubber snakes are doing their job, and we haven't had any birds eating the seedlings in the greenhouse at all. And it is actually crazy to be able to say that, because birds have been my arch nemesis when it comes to gardening, and knock on wood, so far so good. I do have a few small plants over in this bed. These were transplants as well, and these were relatively recently transplanted. Some of this is spinach. This here is a chard, and they're just tiny right now. They've been putting their roots down and getting their roots developed, but hopefully they start to show a decent amount of upward growth soon. And what I have over here is just more of that small baseball-sized golden cross cabbage. It's really tiny, you can barely see it. I know we talked about it before, but I didn't specifically show it to you. This is the strawberry green stalk. It also needs some dismantling and amending. And for the same reasons that I'm not dismantling and amending that green stalk, I'm not dismantling and amending this one right now. I am concerned that there's wasps that have built nests underneath my bonfire peach trees over here, so I'm not messing with those right now. I do have a plan to move these, because these are going to get pretty big. They'll be, you know, 5 feet tall from the base of the container, maybe even a little bit taller, and they're going to branch out a lot. These were new to us this year. We did get a few peaches off of them. These are a white peach variety, and they are very, very good. But really, I think what I'd like to do, these are on wheels, is scoot them down here so that we can put one like right here, and it will grow in the middle of the greenhouse. The greenhouse is probably 10 feet tall. And then maybe I can stick the other one like right here. And then we'd have our 2 peach trees, one here and one there, kind of growing amongst the garden here. And if they happen to be somewhat in the way and I think that they're casting too much shade, I can just roll them somewhere else. It's kind of nice. And even if I wanted to pull them out of the greenhouse entirely, this variety of peach tree, the bonfire peach tree, is hardy down to zone 5. I know that it's best for like super cold zones if the roots are in the ground. So if I was just going to remove them from the greenhouse entirely, I would probably just take them out of these pots and stick them in the ground. They'll be a lot more hardy in ground anyway. I have this Roma tomato that's in this planter. I have actually completely ignored this tomato for several weeks at this point. I've just sort of let the fruits go, but it does have them. I don't have any plans to use that particular planter right now, so I guess I'll leave it. This can be an experiment as well. I have been watering it. If any of you watch the Homestead, Kaylee grows in Virginia, and her tomato tunnel in past years, she has had fresh tomatoes, I think on Christmas before, and that's incredible. And her greenhouse, as far as I can remember, also isn't heated, but I might be wrong. So if you are new to the channel and you haven't seen before our pumpkins, these are Dutch fork pie pumpkins. They were harvested out of our pumpkin patch, which is still going. We're gonna go over there. We harvested a total of 80 pumpkins out of the pumpkin patch, and there are still some over there that we're gonna leave. We have given 30 of the pumpkins away. I've fed out probably 10 so far to our animals, and I have preserved 3 of them. I shut off the electric fence so we can make our way over here. These are some squash that we harvested out of the pumpkin patch. These are the volunteer white zucchini that I talked about earlier. They're really, really good. Harvested big like that. They're still nice and tender on the inside. And the seeds that I obviously fed to my chicken, I think that is where that volunteer random stripy looking pumpkin came from. So here's the pumpkin patch. It does look like some frost settled over here. Got some crunchy leaves over there, but some of it is still alive. Oh yeah, so you can see the frost damage here. It's definitely gonna be a goner by tomorrow morning, but there are quite a few pumpkins out here still. Some of them are quite sizable. There's one there. There's a biggie over there, but we're just leaving these out here. Have you gone to bed early? Hello, sweet girl. Do you want me to break you open a pumpkin? Come here. There you go. The goatee girls want to know what the heck is going on. Is that a good pumpkin, Chloe? So for those of you who are new to the channel or maybe don't follow like our regular vlog content, this is our new pig. This is Chloe. Chloe is basically a pet, and she does have access to all of these pumpkins that are left in here right now. I'm finding that it's hard for her to get into a pumpkin by herself, so she hasn't really been destructive to the patch at all. It's actually been kind of incredible. That frost definitely did more damage overnight than Chloe has done in the couple weeks that she's been here. So I've been coming out every day. She gets her grain, she's got her water, and then I've been busting open one pumpkin, and she's been having a blast. This pumpkin patch here was a pig pen before it was a pumpkin patch, just like the greenhouse was a pig pen before I started growing in it. Pigs provide a lot of nutrition to the ground, and they also really are the best at clearing out things like grass. A lot of people will put chickens in a garden area assuming that they are gonna do good work, and they'll put down manure and things, but chickens will very often, especially if you deal with like those crazy grasses, I don't know if they're called zombie grass or whatever, that grows by those like rhizomes, that grass root that just sort of is super long. I'm not probably describing this super well, but those of you who deal with it know what I'm talking about. They're just super invasive. Chickens, they'll dig around and they'll kind of break up those roots, and sometimes that can be bad because each little root segment can reroot and become a new clump of grass, where pigs will eat those roots, and you can really help clear out bad grasses and things out of an area using pigs. Now, as you can see, we've got tons of grass here, and that's because we had just a few pigs in a larger area, but if you put a pig in a smaller area that you want them to clean out, they would do a heck of a job and leave some good manure behind them. So Chloe's gonna be hanging out in here for a little while as she gets used to our farm, and then she will be joining some of our goats, free ranging. And then we are going to be getting some more feeder pigs this spring. This area is going to turn into a pig pen again for another year, and then we'll replant it again, probably with pumpkins, probably with some corn as well in 2026. I am positive though that we are going to see several volunteer pumpkins next year. So I'm not going to be intentionally planting those pumpkins next year, partially because we got so many this year and I probably won't need them, but I won't be mad if I see a volunteer, which I think we're going to. We have fed out those pumpkins and we'll be feeding out those pumpkins in several different pastures. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity for them to take root. And I don't know, maybe it'll be like a Dutch fork pie pumpkin, but because of that zucchini in there, maybe it'll be like that cross, which we really should pick because that plant is gonna die tonight. Oh, interesting. That one has a different color on its bottom. That is so cool. No. Oh, okay. I thought maybe the whole stem had cracked off, which this is not firm enough to try to pretend to keep it for any real length of storage, but I am curious whether or not this is a toxic cross. Sometimes when squash cross-pollinates, it can have a toxic result, but you'll know it because the squash is bitter. So let's taste it and see what happens, so we can kind of know what to expect if we see this again next year. Okay, so I imagine that the bitterness would come through on this smaller little squash. So I'm just gonna bite this one like an apple. No, it's not bitter at all. It's actually really good. It's nice and firm. I don't know for sure that this is a cross between the Dutch fork pie pumpkin and the white zucchini. It does kind of look like it to me. That white zucchini that I have out there, I've never grown anything like that on my farm. That came from whatever I fed my pigs a couple of years ago, or a couple of summers ago. And what I had grown that looked close like it was called a bush sugaretti. It was a hybrid version of a spaghetti squash. And it was supposed to be bush style, but it wasn't. It vined like crazy, and it did have green stripes like this. This is very pumpkin shaped. I did also grow, well, a round zucchini. That was just what the seed packet said. That was a lot like this, except for if it ever got to this size, it would be a super hard rind, and this is not. Whatever it is, this little bitty baby one does not appear to be bitter at all. So I think we're gonna save this. We can't keep this for super long because it is kind of soft skin, but we can use it. I'm glad that we were able to rescue it before it froze. Yeah, super neat. Good morning. It is now the morning of the 18th, so Thursday, the day before this goes live, and we still have a garden. Now, I'm not complaining. It's just really weird because we did frost harder last night. I mean, I'll put a picture in here right now. There was frost all over the grass, but it seemed like anything really, you know, a foot above the ground really didn't have frost settling, and that just kind of shows how the cool air really can pull. But check it out. We still have the garden. I know that our temperatures are going to be going up for the next couple of weeks, so it looks like we actually did not harvest our last tomatoes the other day. I just find it kind of funny that the year that I prepare in advance and I'm just ready for the frost, and it's no big deal if it comes, but then it leaves the garden behind. Again, I'm not complaining. It's just funny. See, even the okra is alive. Now, we did lose some things that were along the ground. This is that tomato that had frost on it yesterday. Definitely dead. But then over here, I've got a tomato kind of nestled in with everything else that's over here. That's alive. And I waited until now to really come out and assess, because sometimes when it's still real cold out and the frost is still sort of in the leaves or on the leaves, things can look like they are fine. And then when the sun hits the leaves and things start to thaw out, then you can really tell the damage. There's very minimal damage from 2 nights of frost with things being uncovered. It's bizarre. I had forgotten to show you an update on the rutabaga and the beets. These are frost tolerant. I have these hoops here and I could cover them if needed, but I haven't been feeling like I needed to. These guys have established really well. They took a while to get going. I do need to come in here and water. It looks like the beets are starting to get going too. Some of them are not doing as well as others. So the first frost garden tour looks a lot different than I thought it would, honestly, at the start of this. So it looks like we have at least another couple of weeks with our frost tender plants out here in the raised bed garden, and obviously in the greenhouse. Those plants are going to be fine too. I know that some of you who have made it to the end of this video probably want a baby goat update, so I'll throw one in at the end here just for you guys. Good morning. You guys ready to run around a little? Hey, sir. Wrong way. There you go. Go that way. Trying to fight me? What a cutie you are.